What's one misconception about independent school education that particularly frustrates you?
I think I'll go back to the concept of entitlement, that every student who's at an independent school comes from a place of affluence and because of that doesn't care about others, which drives me crazy because that's nothing could be further from the truth.
What's the coolest project you've seen a student create?
In one of our senior technical design course, they do a project with Sunnyview School, which is a school for kids with complex physical or developmental challenges. The boys had created sensor system that allowed a young child to throw a ball to their dad. On the video, the dad said, "Thank you." And that without the Crescent kids, he would never be able to play catch with his child.
Wow.
And it was
magical.
Yeah, it was magical. That's a good word, Raj. It was magical.
Wow.
And it brought me to tears then. It almost brings me to tears now.
Hey there, welcome to the LearnIt podcast behind the Chalkboard. I'm your host, Dheeraj, and I'm super excited that you're tuning into our podcast today. I love having these conversations. We're so blessed to be around so many cool leaders in education today. And I think that these conversations really put light as to all the awesome work that's going on in this industry. One ask I have for you is if you could just take a moment to hit that subscribe or follow button, it would mean the world to me. It helps us to continue the work that we do it in a meaningful way. But I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you. All right. Well, Rich, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you.
I'm really excited for this conversation. And I think we're going to get some really cool insights out of you. So excuse me from now if I get very interesting with my questions as well, but I'm just trying to learn as much as I can.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the invitation, and I'm looking forward to a good conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So 22 years in education, maybe even more now. I don't want to make you feel old necessarily, but that was before, close to when I was born. But you're now, you started, and correct me if I'm wrong, but on the Edmonton side.
Yes.
Now you're the deputy head at Crescent School.
Yes.
Incredible. You've had quite the journey. Now, for those who haven't met you, or those that are listening to you for the first time, would you mind sharing a little bit about what your journey has been like in education thus far?
Yeah, sure. And it's been a lot longer than I care to think about now. But you're right. I spent 22 years at Edmonton Public School Board in a couple of different schools. I started as a junior high school, as we call it there, as opposed to middle school here.
Yeah.
A junior high school teacher, which was grades 7, 8, 9. I graduated from the University of Alberta with an English degree and a bachelor's of education, which much later I upgraded to a master's of education at Queen's.
Yeah.
It was a fascinating time because when I graduated, there's really no teaching jobs. So I spent a year working in a dangerous chemical plant, which was an interesting job, but spent every day essentially phoning who was the head of hiring at that time. A gentleman by the name of Bill Chin at Edmonton Public School, reminding him that perhaps loading anhydrous ammonia into tankers was not my real career path, and that I really wanted a teaching job.
But you always knew that.
I always knew that. It was, and I think, like a lot of teachers, the inspiration was from a couple of wonderful teachers that I had growing up. And I look back at my grade 8 English teacher, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Otten, who was very inspirational in me wanting to choose this career path, in that he was this wonderful role model of what's now become labeled as relational teaching and learning. And I think he just did it naturally, where he was a gentleman who really inspired creativity and passion in the work that we were doing, but at the same time really held us accountable. So it was like a true mentor type of relationship. And it was something that always really stuck with me. And I think in the back of my mind, I wanted to be that person. Of, having a positive influence on young people and hopefully inspiring them to the things they're passionate about. So like I said, I spent 16 years at a junior high school, then literally moved half a kilometer up the road to a high school, taught English there, was fortunate enough to be sent to Florida to be trained by Jan Adkins, who's an amazing international baccalaureate trainer.
Wow.
So got some IB training, and because we were running an IB program at that time. And like I said, it was an incredible 22 years working with a really fascinating, diverse population of students that taught me to be a much, much better teacher.
Yeah.
And then I ended up in Toronto. Had no clue about the independent school system because we didn't really have anything like that in Edmonton.
Okay.
And did some exploration and was really just fortunate, like just so lucky that the head of school at the time was incredibly kind, was also a Liverpool fan, or is also a Liverpool fan, but was incredibly kind through the interview process, saw something in me that he felt resonated with Crescent School and our mission.
And this was still English?
This was still English at the time, yes. And then I did English and phys ed in basically every school that I was at. So I had a dual major and was fortunate enough to be able to do those things. Crescent, I started teaching a leadership program as well. And it was, it's just been such an incredible experience. But the movement over 22 years to now I started in 2013 at Crescent. So everybody can do the math. It's been a long career. I feel has just been gone in the blink of an eye.
When you moved to Toronto, did you think TDSB, Toronto Catholic? Did you try and pursue the public system, and then the independent system came about, and you're like what was in your mind? Was it like, I'm moving to Toronto and I learned about the independent schools and I made my mind that I'm going to work there, or was it that I'm going to do both and see which one I can pursue?
No, I actually, my sights were set on TDSB. I figured that was the next logical progression from Edmonton Public.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't having a great deal of luck in getting into that system. And one day my wife said to me, well, you should really look at like the case schools.
Yeah. Your wife's like, you got to start working, Rich.
Well, get out of the house, which I don't blame her. But in my mind, of course, as an English teacher, I'm like, okay, what a school that's a case for what? Like, what does that mean? A case? She's like, no, CAIS. I said, I don't know what that means.
You should have learned a little bit about it.
So he's like, well, it's these Canadian accredited independent school system. I'm like, oh, okay. So started looking them up. And of course, I was just, again, lucky following this Case Careers website. A position came up at Crescent School. And I have to be honest, Raj, I mean, I was on that campus for 5 minutes. And I was like, this is the place I have to be. This is the school that I could see spending my entire career here. And I feel exactly the same way today. So yeah, it was certainly, I didn't come here with the intent of, exploring the independent school system. Yeah.
In hindsight, has being in the independent school system given you more opportunity to experiment?
Absolutely. I think there's just, there's greater freedom. I mean, obviously we're a ministry inspected school, so, we take our curriculum from the Ministry of Education as well. But we have more professional development opportunities. We have from our head of school, we have such great leadership and flexibility and adaptability in how we program for our kids. We're in constant conversation about how do we innovate, what's best to operationalize our mission with our students. How do we give the boys the best learning experience possible? And because, we're not hundreds of thousands of students like a TDSB, we can be a little more nimble and agile in our thinking.
Yeah, you could do a little bit more from that perspective as well. When you moved into the independent school system and you started working, was there anything that surprised you? Like, I didn't think that would be true.
Well, I think the greatest surprise, I think kids are kids. It doesn't matter what the environment, where you're coming from. Kids are kids.
Absolutely.
And they want to be heard and they want to be valued, and they know, they want to know that you love them and that you believe in them. And whether it was Edmonton Public Schools or it's a Crescent School, that's never changed. I think we all carry personal biases.
Yeah.
And the one that I carried, because I come from a very working class environment. I was in a public school system, kids from all walks of life. And I think, the personal bias was about, this is an independent school and, parents pay tuition. And so it's a very specific demographic or clientele that you're working with. And I think, there's a natural tendency to think that these are going to be entitled, which is a word that's thrown around a lot. in the independent system, entitled kids and families. And what I quickly learned was they're the most lovely, grounded, down-to-earth people who want exactly what we want for their kids, and that's the best.
Yeah.
For them to be taken care of, to have a great educational experience, and to be known in the school. And like I said, I don't think that changes no matter where you are. So it was a bit of popping my own personal bias a little bit.
I think that's something I would agree in terms of something I also had to change my mind on. Because the independent school system was new to me too, I'd say a couple of years ago. And I was like, okay, maybe it's a different demographic. And maybe only the rich kids go here. But I soon learned that's not true necessarily in terms of my preconceived notion of what those kids would be like. At the end of the day, to your point, kids are kids, right? Doesn't matter what school they're at, they're still kids. And a big part of it is the parenting, right? And what effect that has on the way that they show up, the way that they treat others, the way that they show respect to teachers as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, the kids and the families that we're bringing into the school, we feel are mission fit kids. I mean, we talk about, our mission statement is pretty poignant in that it's men of character from boys of promise. Crescent School is very much representative of the Toronto of today.
Yeah.
So the demographic, and whether it's socioeconomic, whether it's, cultural, ethnicity, we're really well represented.
Yeah.
And it's about boys of promise, kids that we see have the potential to be, great future leaders, kids that are going to deeply impact their community beyond the school. Those are the kids and the families that we bring in.
Yeah.
And they're an absolute joy to work with.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the all boys system. I mean, I've spoken to a lot of heads at all girls school, so I know a lot about that. If I was in an all boys school, I just imagine chaos. And I might be wrong, but that's what my first mind goes to is that school's probably chaotic. And there's probably very loud kids everywhere. And maybe that's because of the way that I grew up, the school that I grew up. What is it like at an all-boys school? And is my assumption correct, or am I completely off the mark?
You're not completely off the mark. They're boys.
Yeah.
But messy's good. For learning and for character development, we want our students to be themselves, to be able to represent themselves. And we know that boys learn best by doing. We are very much a relational, experiential, active school. And we expect our kids to be super busy. We expect them to be involved in everything. And with that comes a little bit of chaos, but it's good chaos. This isn't something where classrooms are out of control or the hallways are wild or there's, all sorts of things going on all the time that are, nefarious.
Yeah.
This is entirely boys being boys in the best way. And when we leave our kids and let them immerse themselves in their learning and in their co-curriculars, we run 3 Friday Night Lights events each year, a soccer, a basketball, and a rugby. And we will have boys that I remember our last basketball one in the middle of a game in a timeout, they suddenly locked arms and started singing our school song. So yes, it was loud, but in the best way.
Yeah.
So
you don't want to take that away from them either.
Never, because I think if you take passion out of anybody, then they lose purpose. And our boys, I think they have purpose.
Is there anything else about boys' education that's very interesting in the way that they want to learn or have to learn? I mean, you talk about needing to allow them to be experimental and learn by doing, which may be slightly more important if you're in an all-boys school. Is there anything else that when it comes to all-boys education that you notice is significant to that way of operation?
I think the greatest thing I learned early when I was teaching English is in a all-boys school, how emotive the boys were. Like so much more so in a public system when I taught coeducationally, it was only the most mature, senior male students who would talk, filled with emotion about a piece of literature, about something that they read last night or something that occurred in the news. Whereas, at Crescent and in that environment, boys will talk very openly about how they feel about what's going on in their lives, about their friends about successes, failures, challenges, things that are sad, things that are really happy. I think they express themselves far, far more openly and eloquently
That surprises me a little bit.
in that environment. I think it's very and I can only speak for the Crescent students.
Yeah.
I think it's very counterintuitive to this notion of, in an all boys school. I mean, this isn't, a military boarding school of the past. The kids are very cognizant of the world around them. I think they're very socially astute, and given that, they tend to communicate their feelings really, really well and deeply.
I find that very interesting because I would think that, the school that I grew up in, at least for the boys, we wouldn't really share much. We would just keep it within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we wouldn't feel like boys if we shared it. And maybe, and truth be told, that should change, and maybe that has changed. But that was the way that I grew up in school.
Oh, I was the same. It was valued, and I think in many cases it was the expectation that if things were challenging, you just dealt with them, but you dealt with them in silence.
Yeah.
Whereas, for us, we want our students to know that, independence is important. To be somebody who learns to deal with some challenges and to develop resilience is a really nice quality in the world. It's an important quality, but at the same time, you've got supports all around you, right? You've got faculty and staff who care about you. You've got administrators who care about you. You've got your friends who care about you. And at Crescent, and I actually thought, this is a surprise, I guess, going back to your earlier question, is when I started at the school, there was all this talk about the brotherhood, the Crescent brotherhood. And I kind of shrugged it off, and thought, yeah, brotherhood.
Yeah.
What does that really mean? And then I started to learn that students who were 2, 3, 5, 20 years graduated were still coming back to the school, still coming back to see people, still coming back to give back. And, say, like, I got so much out of being at Crescent School that I need to be here. I need to be here. I need to be able to give back to the school. I will always be a part of this brotherhood. And they go off to university together, and they would spend, their Sunday night dinners together. They maintain these long-standing relationships and friendships. And it'll be, 5 of them have gone off to tour Europe together over the summer. And it's something that
real
is
friendship there.
It's a really, really special environment.
Wow. That sounds pretty incredible. I'm going to ask a little bit of a fun question, just because it's come to mind. I used to hate English in school.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely hate it. I would look at my schedule and be like, shit, I got English. How do you make English fun? I have always felt like languages are very hard to teach, very hard to learn, and blatantly boring for me. How do you teach it in a way that's fun for English teachers out there? What have you done that you're like, this works pretty well?
I think it's about connecting it to kids' real world experience, right? And it's understanding that there's beauty in language, and like, what's the purpose? Like, what's your audience? Who's your audience? Are you writing to entertain, to persuade, to inform? And for me, it was always about taking things that, when you talk about inherently boring, or so why do we have to learn Shakespeare?
Yeah.
Good question. And then we'd walk through the whys behind it. But it was always a thing where if we modernized and connected it back into their own world, suddenly when they realize, wow, Macbeth's really just this, trying to usurp and become the CEO of this corporation. How does that? No, I get that. I get that.
Yeah.
I'm on the business team, and I'd really like to be. I'm like, okay, well, we're not going to kill anybody, but what does that look like? And then I'd always do things where the kids had project-based type of work, and they connect it back into their world, but they do really, really fun stuff with it. We used to do 2-minute Macbeths, for example, and I had a group who did a Macbeth rap that was phenomenal. And it was just them going off to have fun, but showcasing their learning in a way that wasn't so structured and, as you said, boring, dull, the 5-paragraph essay, type of thing, which, great.
I wish you were my English teacher.
Well, no, it was just, I think it was just keeping me entertained.
Mine was pretty strict.
more than them.
Yeah, mine was strict, and we would just go through and read and, present and write a poem or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Mine wouldn't rhyme, Yeah, I was facing some other issues, but you sound like you'd be a fun teacher to have. Anyways, I could probably talk about that more. I love the fact that when we talk about Crescent and this idea of experiential and real world, and you've hinted at that as well. There's also the 40 in 9 program, right? Which is, when I was reading a little bit about it, which is pretty unique. 40 hours of community service that students have to complete. Can you, I don't want to share too much, but can you share a little bit about what that program's about?
Sure. Well, we looked at it as I'm sure you know, the Ministry of Education mandates that, for a student to receive their Ontario secondary school diploma, they have to have their 40 community service hours. So it's like, that's great. We also recognize that if it's a mandate, it can very easily become a checkbox. I need to do this to graduate. For us, that's not meaningful. When we talk about character, we understand that character is multifaceted.
Right.
And we talk about, performance character, and in this case, civic character. What does it mean to give back intentionally? What does it mean to deepen relationships out in the community? And we know that when boys have a positive impact, or when any young person has a positive impact in the community, it deepens their engagement in their own learning. So we crafted a 40 and 9 program where all of our grade 9 students look to complete their ministry mandated 40 community service hours in their grade 9 year, freeing them up to look at the rest of their upper school experience through grade 10, 11, 12 to continue to serve in the community, but for a very different purpose. The mandates taken care of in grade 9. Now it's about giving back. It's about giving back in a very deep, intentional way because of the empathy, compassion, and I think just human relationship skills that it builds to be out working with people that are, maybe a little bit outside your own comfort zone or your own community. And we know that intercultural communication is massively important in today's world. So, I kind of did a skim the other day. I was looking at this, and I think in our last cohort of 9s, I think 94% of them completed the program prior to the summer break, and the rest were completing it over summer.
Wow.
So I think we'll literally end up with 100% of our grade 9s this year will have completed their 40 hours. Some have a ridiculous number of service hours. You're talking about kids with 250, 300 hours.
What did they do?
They've done all sorts of things. We've got kids who are running camps for marginalized youth. We've got boys who are running like hockey camps, tennis camps, like all sorts of incredible things, to work with communities. We've got kids who are serving, in their community churches. They've done an amazing job of being out and about. We've got lots that are connected to, because we know what our current food scarcity is like in this city. We've got lots that are connected to Out of the Cold programs and, all sorts of food-based organizations.
Yeah.
So again, we're really proud of them for taking this on and for basically saying the 40 hours doesn't matter. It's about
the act of doing.
It's about the act of service, the act of doing, and very much about building allyships. This isn't some sort of mentality of, we're here to give you. We're also here to receive from you.
Yeah.
So, they realize how much they're benefiting and how much their cup's being filled up by working out in the community.
I think it's important to know that from a young age.
I agreed.
Because you start to feel like, okay, this is really nice. I feel good. I feel good serving. I feel good helping. And it builds the personality to want to do it more as you grow and give back as well.
Yeah. And what we're seeing is it's something that is very strongly supported and I think mirrored by our Crescent Parent Association and, members of our Crescent community where as adults, the families are doing the exact same thing where they're working in unison with organizations to give back, and got a number of people who are serving on boards and They're just so deeply intertwined with their, with their broader communities that it's really inspiring.
Yeah, it's incredible. And to your point, and I want to go back to this because I think it's important. This idea of a checkbox, and we just have to tick the box. There's so many things that we have to tick the box on, whether it's our curriculum, courses, community hours. Has there been a moment where you've looked at something and been like, are we just ticking the box on this? Are we really being thoughtful in actually doing this? And what was that about?
Well, I think we always, as educators, examine the curriculum that we're teaching, and we look at, this is what the ministry says. That's great. Like, here's a basic curriculum. That's the content. So if we're just going to plow through the content and, very much what you said about your English class. I mean, if this is going to be just rolled out and you write and you present and that's all there is to it. I think we are checking a box because it's just, we need this course as a prerequisite for this course. For us, it's not just the what, it's the how. So, we've been very intentional with, great, our kids they're all going to get their Ontario Secondary School diploma. A lot of them have advanced placement credits they have on top of that. They're going to go off into post-secondary institutions and beyond and do great things in the world, but we don't want to check a box as in, we know what the research says about kids doing school. Just one school is a stepping stone to the next, and post-secondary is a stepping stone to your job. And, we don't want that sort of an approach. So for us, there is no check box of, kids come to do school. We want our kids to be there, to be deeply, deeply immersed in the learning environment and get every minute out of their time at Crescent that they can, because there's so much more than I sat in a class and got my mark and went on to the next thing. So we're very sensitive to, like I said, doing school is a term that's floated out there in edu-speak. And we really work hard to avoid that.
Is this like a meeting you have at the start of the semester where like, okay, let's all get together and figure out how we could figure out the how rather than just ticking the box? Or is this culturally embedded in every individual to say, hey, I trust that you're going to do it, but we don't have to like, what does it look like in practice? Is it an individual practice or is it a group practice?
I think it's both. I mean, it comes from our strategic vision, our strategic academic plan, right from our head of school, and it cascades down. And we've got, every one of our divisional leaders and their leadership team, this is the work that they're doing with their faculty. All our subject heads, that's the work they're doing with their teams. And then to your point, Raj, that's the work that individually our teachers have taken on. They want to create the deepest learning environment for our kids.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to me to watch teachers who are 25 years in the classroom, and every year they're reinventing themselves and how they do things and building out these incredible cross-divisional, cross-curricular programs because they want the best for their kids. And I think it is, to your point, I think it is now just embedded in our culture that if you're going to teach at Crescent School, being an outstanding classroom teacher is the baseline. And there's everything about that. What are your relational skills? How are you really learning about your students beyond the classroom? And it's so encouraging when you hear those conversations in the hallway and in the dining hall of teachers. Oh, okay, you guys are, you were down 2-1 in your playoffs. Like, what's happened now? Because I know you guys played last night, and they're having these other conversations, right? Yeah. So I think just that whole cultural piece allows us to really elevate our kids' experience.
Yeah.
And I mean, I really believe that, boys deeply know when people know them and they care about them, and they're fiercely loyal and they want to do well. They really want to do well and show, I want to give back because you've given so much to me.
Do you sometimes have to explain that to parents as well sometimes?
I think, again, our parents, we have a lot of communication with our parents. We have all sorts of coffee and conversations type of events. Obviously, we have the curriculum evenings and these types of events as well. But we're in constant communication. We've got, an incredible Crescent Parent Association that works as liaisons between our broader parent community and the school. I think everybody's on the same page. I mean, again, everybody wants the best for their children. And they realize as boys, I mean, anybody who has a boy knows, they want to they want to be active, they want to be involved.
Yeah.
But again, they want to be known and loved. And that's the language that we actually use at the school. It gets, the boys know how we feel about them and they reciprocate, so I don't think we have much difficulty aligning with our parent community. I think they want exactly the same thing. They value exactly the same thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And at the school, I mean, from what we understand, language is a big part of the school too, and learning about different languages. I know you, maybe it's you because you've got, used to teach English, but I know there's a French program as well, Spanish, Mandarin, a lot more languages than you would traditionally see at an average school in terms of a learning opportunity for students. Why did that come about?
I think for us, we recognize that and offering multiple languages allows boys to have multiple points of entry into learning another language. So when they come out, from grade 7 and 8 in middle school and they have their French, they can continue with French. And a lot of our students do continue with French. Some go to Spanish, some go to Mandarin. And again, for us, it's more than just language acquisition. It's about understanding culture. We know we live in a globalized world now and intercultural communication is massively important. So it's understanding perspective. We know the skills that come along with learning a language of, again, critical thinking, complex problem solving.
Right.
And we do know, I think maybe particularly for boys, the confidence that's built as well. The first time that a boy goes to a French restaurant and orders in French, understands that conversation, it builds efficacy, and it builds engagement. And we know that translates into all sorts of other environments and it transfers across disciplines. So, kids that are having great success in a modern language often have that same success in other classes because it instills a sense of value and confidence in them. And again, we want our boys to not only learn language skills, but then the confidence, the courage.
Actually go and use those skills.
And I think the humility that comes with better understanding a culture of being able to go somewhere around the world and recognize this is a French speaking, environment or culture that I'm immersed in, but to respectfully engage in that conversation, I think speaks to who they are.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. I mean, I think it's something that I also find in some ways is underrated, if I may use that word, in the sense of like, it's just another language. We can learn it online or we could Duolingo it or whatever, right? But I think it's, to your point, there are skills beyond just a language that a teenager acquires when they start to use those in practice.
Absolutely. And again, we take very much that active experiential lens. When we work on our languages and, kids go out of the school.
It's not just sitting and, textbooks.
No, it's not when I learned French, with the headphones
French
on.
was even worse for me, so I don't.
Yeah, me too. The headphones on, just regurgitating what the person on the headphone said.
Right.
But with almost no context. Whereas, our modern language department is absolutely amazing and they do all sorts of really cool things with, virtual reality sessions and, where kids are actually submitting, I watched some wonderful projects where they're submitting like their journey through the Toronto transit system, but doing it all in another language, to talk about here's how I took TTC from, this station to this station to the school and on the bus. And, but they're doing it all in Spanish.
Wow.
Really, really fascinating. Again, connecting it back to their own lives. Where is this applicable? How do I use the skills that I've acquired?
Yeah, no, I think that's really, really interesting. You've also, you've been present in the case community as well as you're talking about the IBSC spaces, the conferences, the ability to share. When you're sharing Crescent's story in particular with other educators, what's one practice or insight that you always like to share with other educators?
I mean, for me, I think it's about, first and foremost, going to an IBSC conference is humbling. There's so much incredible practice in the education world right now. And, it's always really interesting to hear what people are doing globally. To be able to sit down with somebody who's, teaching in South Africa or teaching in Australia and looking at their
It's pretty cool.
approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, and the things that we just naturally borrow from one another. I think that's the preface to this response. Is I'm just always honored to be at these.
What's something you've learned from those conferences that always stuck with you?
I think I'll go right back to one of the first things I said, how similar kids are, that no matter where they are across the globe, how much the IBSC community leans into just knowing their boys, valuing their boys, and wanting boys to be really good people. And I think when we look at all the things that are going on in the world right now, it's essential that in an independent boys' school system, we're producing kids that are of character.
Absolutely.
Kids who exhibit compassion and empathy and, see beyond themselves. And I think that's a very consistent message.
I think there's a responsibility there.
There is a huge responsibility. And I think as a school, for us at Crescent, that's a responsibility we take really seriously. We feel that it's imperative that we are developing young men of character. And as I said, we look at that in a multifaceted way, and we talk about moral character and civic character and performance character and what those things mean. So I think back to your question, your initial question, one of the things I really try to get across at any conference I'm at is the work that we've done around our portrait of a graduate and our essential character qualities, and what we infuse in every aspect of our education at Crescent, through our curricular, co-curricular, and communal programmings of how much character matters and what that means to us.
Yeah,
and that it's a lifelong journey. As when we started this today, like I said, you can do the math, and it's over 30 years in education. And there's not a day that goes by that I'm not trying to improve, trying to get better as a person and as an educator.
Absolutely.
And that's what we want our boys to understand, is that it's a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
But it actually starts by looking outside of yourself, and looking towards, what's for the greater good. And that's what we want for our kids.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, boys in general have changed a lot in the last 12 years. Even when I talk about my school experience or yours, I'm sure fundamentally there have been so many changes in the way that we think, what is expected of us, what we can do, what we can't do. What is your thought in terms of how boys are going to be in the next 10 years? If you were to just use your best shot and say, I think there's going to be more of this or less of this. What do boys in the next 10 years look like at schools?
I'm hoping, and I'm encouraged by watching how our boys, and I will say, have evolved in their thinking in many ways. I'm hoping that they continue to be compassionate, and that they become even more expressive than they are now, where they understand that what was traditionally considered feminine or female qualities are human qualities, and they're beautiful human qualities. And for boys to be able to express themselves and to shed tears when they're sad, and to hold their friends up when they need being held up. And that's a sign of strength and not weakness, and asking for help and recognizing that there's a huge world beyond where I exist. And how do I make a positive change in the world? And it's just little steps. And I'm hoping, from everything that I've watched over, my dozen years at Crescent, and those boys have always been amazing, just the loveliest guys. But I think you're right, Raj, that we're becoming more and more thoughtful and intentional in how we have boys talk about love, for example, and that it's a good word to use.
Yeah,
that you can love somebody and love them for what they're doing in a very respectful.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree with you. I mean, I've never said love you to any of my friends.
yeah,
I was never felt normal.
yeah,
It was always like, yo, what's up? You know, it was never, oh, I love you.
yeah.
I hear that a lot more with like my partner, and she uses it a lot with her friends and stuff. But for us, it's, at least for me growing up, it wasn't anything normal. Do you think, like, how far along the journey of getting there do you think we are? Like, is there still a lot of work to do? I mean, I haven't been to an all-boys school, but I expect that it's not all perfect.
No, oh no, there's always work to be done. But I will say, like you, that wasn't something as a young person or as a young man
Yeah.
I said to any of my male friends. That was, I love you as an expression that was very much tucked away,
Yeah.
for specific people in your life. Whereas now, I use it freely to the people I do love.
Yeah.
And I use it in front of the boys, and I've openly expressed to the boys that I love them.
Mhm.
I've never had a son, but I've had
All them.
hundreds of sons,
Yeah.
because that's, as educators, that's the way we feel about them, and we talked about in loco parentis, as a reasonable parent in education. But, for us, it extends beyond some, legal type of term.
Mm.
It's about really caring for the students in our, in our school, caring about them outside of the school and letting them know that we do love them and that we do support them. And
Yeah.
sometimes that support is tough love. And that's okay too,
Mm.
because if we didn't care, we wouldn't hold them to a standard that we think they can reach.
Yeah.
But I think the boys are a long way on that journey.
Yeah.
I only see it making them better people, better partners, better parents.
What happens when they go to post-secondary? And then there's all these other boys who weren't at Crescent School.
Well, and that's a really interesting question because, what we're, part of what we're doing is as a character school is preparing our kids to go off into post-secondary campuses and the work world. And again, I've been greatly heartened by conversations I've had with young alum when they come back.
And sorry to interrupt, what's a character school? What does that mean?
Well, we again, our mission statement is men of character from boys of promise, right? And we are a school that has infused character education in every element of our life at school.
Okay.
So we're teaching curriculum, but we're teaching, what does it mean to be a good person? What does it mean to have strong moral character? And we think that's at least as important as
the actual curriculum itself.
As teaching academics.
Yeah.
We don't want our students to graduate as young academics. We want them to graduate as really, really good people as well.
Yeah.
So when they go off to post-secondary institutions, they know how to interact with other people. They know, what it means to be a good person. And then I think it's about teaching them the strength to stand up for what they believe in. And, when you're on a university campus and there's all sorts of other social challenges and, you have far more freedoms than you would have as a secondary school student.
Yeah.
It's about making good choices, and we believe in the choices that our boys are capable of making. So again, I have every confidence that when they go off into the post-secondary world, they're not negatively influenced, but instead they're stepping up as role models for what it means to be a good, fine young man.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. No, that is, I mean, I think that's really strong. And I mean, to me at least, my 4 years at university and the friends I made at university, I spend most of my time with them even today.
Mm-hmm.
As compared to, I'd say, less in high school. And it could be because I did my secondary like thousands of miles away. So logistically, it's a little bit difficult. But, I find that those 4 years at university, to me, were significantly more important than my 10 years in school. Mm-hmm. And that could be different for other students where they have closer relationships with the folks at school. And so they spend more time with them. But that sphere of influence, the people you spend time with, especially post-secondary, because of all the freedom you have, all the opportunities you have, those people that you select to spend your time with, they really shape you
Very
at the
much
end
so.
of the day.
Yeah, I agree. Very much so.
Interesting. That's really good. You're also responsible at Crescent for professional growth, for other faculty, for other staff as well. What is one area you think a lot of staff and faculty today struggle with?
I don't know if struggle with is the right term, but I think a challenge certainly is the emergence of generative AI. You know, and teaching kids how to ethically use, you know, and look at generative AI as a tool, you know, something to enhance your learning, something that can be used. I mean, the same as people once feared the calculator, and then, you know, Google Docs was going to crush everything, and the internet was, you know, had destroyed all knowledge acquisition. No student was ever going to learn how to research again because of the internet. Everybody's just going to land on Wikipedia. And, you know, then when generative AI started to really emerge as a tool, I think there was a natural assumption that kids were just going to use it to plagiarize, you know, because you could have ChatGPT write your papers for you. Which again
must be a nightmare for an English teacher. Actually.
But again, what our teachers have done is leaned into deepening the learning environment. So it's about process over product, you know, which is what it always has been, really. It's just has, I think, challenged us to rethink what that means, you know, because plagiarism's plagiarism. I mean, if that's your fear, you know, people have had people writing their own papers for them and, you know, for ages, you know, or copy and pasting off the internet, doing it straight out of a book at the library. You know, I mean,
I've done that.
Yeah.
I was like 15.
Exactly.
Right. I wanted to get done with the assignment. Like I was a kid.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah. So I agree, you know, and this is just a more powerful version of that. So again, it's saying, look, let's future-proof our kids, right? This isn't going away. You know, generative AI is not going anywhere, but in a upward trajectory.
Yeah.
So again, I think, you know, from a professional development standpoint, it's about what are the tools that we should be leaning into? How do we teach our kids to use them in a really ethical way? How do they scrutinize knowledge acquisition so they don't become just better prompt engineers? They actually become, you know, really strong researchers and, like I said, you know, students who can look at the information that's coming at them and discern the validity of it, and you know, use things like, you know, deep research as a great tool, not something to be feared. So I think that's like the biggest professional learning that's been going on right now, and will continue to
you know what, I you know, when I was talking to another educator, I mean, I'm relatively younger. I say I love it. I love it for two reasons. One is because as educators, it makes us rethink and it pushes us a little bit to say, how can we redesign our classroom experience, our curriculum, how we assess, how we do. It pushes us to think, to ask, to put the question mark back on the sentence, right? And I like that because I think it creates more innovative ways of learning and teaching. And for students, I think it is our responsibility to let them use some of those tools, because whether we like it or not, they're going to use it.
Absolutely.
And the better they are at it, my perspective, the more successful they're going to end up being. So we would be doing a disservice to them if we took that all away from them and sort of like put these strict boundaries, because when they go off to post-secondary, when they go start working, wherever they go, it doesn't matter. These things are going to be a part of their everyday life.
Oh, absolutely. And again, I mean, I think it just goes back. I agree with you, Raj, entirely. I mean, they're great tools.
Yeah.
So use them for what they're supposed to be, right? Tools.
Yeah.
You know, they're there to help us become better at what we want to do. They're not there to replace thinking.
Absolutely.
You know, so the creativity piece, the complex problem solving, the idea to critically think through, how do you actually even prompt engineer well? How do you ask really, really good questions, which is something we've been teaching our kids forever.
Yeah.
Don't come up and say, yeah, I don't get this.
Yeah.
Okay, first, it's a statement, it's not a question. Secondly, it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Right? So if you ask ChatGPT a very vague question, you'll get a very vague answer.
Yeah.
So again, it's teaching the kids, how do I ask good questions? So it's, you know, how do I receive that feedback? How do I give better feedback? Those are good skills that people should be taking with them anyway.
Yeah. It's like plagiarism and this whole, you know, stress about like students using it to cheat and sort of to plagiarize. Is that a bigger issue at a boys' school?
No, not at all. I mean, it's I don't think any student ever goes into an assignment with the idea of plagiarizing.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, we do a lot of work around our kids with executive functioning skills of how do you learn to prioritize and time manage? And, because that's ultimately, and I think that's as old as time, right? That's where people end up cheating on something, where they plagiarize, where somebody else does their homework, is because they just run out of time.
Yeah.
They haven't prioritized well. So we work on those skills. But then I think, for our students as well, they want to represent themselves.
Yeah, they want to be good people. And to your point, you're building character.
Yeah.
And part of that, how you show up, how you approach something, that's your personality, that's your character.
Exactly. And when we talk about, one of our essential character qualities is about being a moral person. So what does that mean in the moment? We have kids who are like, nah, I'd rather take a bit of a beating on this assignment than have ChatGPT write it. And they also fully recognize that there's a lot of nuance that goes on in the classroom that ChatGPT is not picking up.
Yeah.
So if you want a 60 paper, it can probably write a good one for you.
Yeah. And I could, now because I've used it a lot in work and all that stuff, I could spot it from a mile away.
Well, that's
I think that's one thing as an educator is even you need to use it to understand.
Yes.
Because you get better at understanding, okay, I don't think a student wrote this or did this. And it's not hard to spot.
No, not at all. Because again,
and you understand your students so well, right?
We know our kids.
Yeah.
Right. So you know what their voice is like, their thought process. And yeah, you're right. You can tell when it's not them.
Yeah.
The same as they could tell if it was not me.
Yeah.
So it's again, it's just something we're all working through together.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how it should be.
Yeah. And again, our students have been fantastic.
Yeah.
We learn from them as well because, like you, they're younger and they love the tools and they have time to use them. It is exciting. And, now you've got this great collaboration between teacher and student where, the student's also saying, oh, this is a really cool way of using this tool.
How do you channel that energy towards
how do you channel
being more productive?
Yeah. And we know that there's a lot of jobs that have not yet been created where that's going to exist.
Absolutely.
So, pretending it's not going forward is certainly not the right approach.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's really, really cool. I'm going to shift gears here, Rich. I'm going to move into a rapid fire beyond the classroom. All right. I'm going to shoot you a question and you can give me a response in under a minute. Does that sound okay?
Sure.
Okay, let's do it. First question. One thing not many people know about you.
I love to work with my hands. I build a lot. Do a lot of, we're at this beautiful wooden table. I'll do a lot of this type of work. Or I'll find a piece of reclaimed wood and turn it into some piece of furniture.
You have a Facebook marketplace thing going?
Yeah, no, I don't. It's all for either our family or our friends or, but yeah, I love doing it. Something I learned from my dad, who's a master craftsman.
Love that. That's actually very interesting. What's one misconception about independent school education that particularly frustrates you?
I think I'll go back to the concept of entitlement, that every student who's at an independent school comes from a place of affluence and because of that doesn't care about others, which drives me crazy because that's nothing could be further from the truth. I think also the conflation of independent and private schools, they're not the same things. There's a lot of private schools that are essentially a place to go and do very little and get a credit. That's not what an independent school is. We are all ministry inspected. We are held to the highest standards. And we're also, in the case of, like a Crescent School, we're also CASE accredited. So we have multiple accreditation processes that we have to go through, and they are rigorous.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect anything less. What would a younger Rich think about the person you've become today? What would surprise him the most? I mean, you still support Liverpool, so that's there, but...
Yeah. I think I don't think there'd be any surprise about the passion for doing what I do. I think I was in my second year of teaching when I said, when the fire is gone, when I can't give 100%, I'll walk away, because it's a profession that you've got to be able to give every piece of yourself to when you're at work. You've got to be there for your kids. There's no off switch in teaching. I think the younger version would be surprised that I'm teaching.
Yeah.
That I didn't land somewhere else. Where I'm not really sure, but
pleasantly surprised.
I think pleasantly surprised. In how much commitment there's been over a long career.
I love that. What's the coolest project you've seen a student create?
There's been a lot, but I have to say, at Crescent School in one of our senior technical design course, they do a project with Sunnyview School, which is a school for kids with complex physical or developmental challenges. And I never really, I didn't understand it the first year or so that I had heard about it until I watched the video. And it's essentially our students create toys, games for kids who
Wow.
don't have the developmental capacity or the physical capacity to play those games. And I watched the video, and the boys this one group had created a sensor system that allowed a young child to basically run their hand over top of it, and it threw a ball to their dad, this person's dad. And on the video, I'm going to get emotional, sorry. On the video, the dad said, "Thank you." And that without the Crescent kids, he would never be able to play catch with his child.
Wow.
And it was
magical.
Yeah, it was magical. That's a good word, Raj. It was magical.
Wow.
And it brought me to tears then. It almost brings me to tears now. It was one of the single most beautiful student projects I'd ever seen because of the impact it had on somebody else's life.
It shows so much depth and care and so much character.
I agree.
Perfect. That's to your point at your school.
Yes.
You know, I love that. One last question on the rapid fire. This one's for me personally. All-time best player at Liverpool?
Steven Gerrard.
Okay, that was quick. Okay. I would agree. I wouldn't disagree. All right. I'm going to move gears into our final question.
Sure.
So we have a bit of a tradition here. We have our previous guests leave questions for our next guest on the notebook. And then I'll give you an opportunity to leave a question for our next guest as well.
Okay.
So I'll pull up a question here and let's see what we have. You may know some of these people as well, so.
It's going to be somebody who's tried to stump me.
This question is from Catherine Hant.
Okay.
She's the head of school at St. Mildred's Lightbourne.
Mm-hmm.
Her question is, what is one thing you have done before you were ready as a leader, and what did this teach you?
Wow, that's a great question. I think back to when I shifted to becoming the head of our upper school. It was right when we came out of the pandemic. And it was chaotic. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of structural changes. There's a lot of scheduling changes. And I made a decision around a piece that was connected to our schedule, our timetable, and a sort of duty roster model for our faculty. And at the time, it never really felt right to me. But because I was new in the role, felt that I needed to, put a stamp on something early in the year. I kind of pushed away the fact that people had 30 months of pandemic, that, they were exhausted.
Yeah.
And our faculty did an absolutely phenomenal job through the pandemic. So I fired off this email. Here's how this is going to happen. And it was like a hit send moment, and then
I should have hit
I sober second thought. The really nice thing was, I don't think that email was out there for 2 hours. And a faculty member who I have a great deal of respect for and a lot of trust in came into my office and said, "Can I tell you something?" I'm like, "Sure." And he said, "I want to explain why that email did not sit well." It's like, "Okay." And he walked me through it in a really respectful,
professional way,
professional manner. And I said, "Yeah, I kind of figured that's where it was going to land."
Yeah.
And he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, let's co-craft something." He gave me feedback, designed something back out, and within, hours, I rescinded the first email and said, "Let's do this." And it was the greatest learning out of that, Raj, was no decision is made unilaterally as a leader. That to lead, you have to understand the people that you're leading, and they empower you to be better.
Yeah.
So you need to empower them to have voice. And for me, I've took that moment and I've really tried to the best of my ability to make sure people know that they're heard and that they're valued. Sometimes with greater success than others. But it's always in the back of my mind. And I really appreciated that from a faculty member that cared enough.
And you need people like that.
Yes.
That can be straight with you, but also can tell you that, hey, this works or this doesn't work.
Yep.
I think you need people like that in your life too.
Agreed. And that's probably the thing I'm most proud of, is being part of a culture where people wander into my office and share beautiful stories that are, heartwarming, and also share stories where like, okay, let me take you to task here.
Yeah.
All right. And we can have that open line of communication. And I think that really, really matters. And again, that's modeled from, our head of school down.
Yeah.
So that's the culture that we continue to try to foster at the school.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, yeah.
That's really cool. I'm going to have you, Rich, leave a question for our next guest.
Okay.
So you could be as hard as Catherine or you could go easy, but it's totally up to you.
No, she had a good question. I'll be more gentle.
Yeah.
There we go.
Hey, wonderful. Well, Rich, this has been an absolute joy to do. I mean, you embody the Crescent culture.
Well, thank you.
And it's the first time I have truthfully interacted with anyone from Crescent. So I am grateful that it gets to be you first.
I appreciate that.
See that culture, and it means a lot. You've changed my mind today on what boys' education looks like in Canada. And for that, I'm very grateful because I think that's a very, very nice thing for me to change my mind on. And I just appreciate you sharing these stories, these insights, because I'm sure there's someone out there that it's going to help support and help in their journey. So thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you, George. I really appreciate the time and the work that you're doing, and that you're digging into what's going on in education, across the country. You've had some great guests on, so I'm really honored to be able to sit with you today. Thank you.
Absolutely. And before we close out, one last question for you is, who is someone we should reach out to be our next guest?
Oof. That's a long list. I think somebody who would be fascinating is Dr. Jean Clinton, who's at McMaster University. She's a child psychiatrist, but has a huge reach into public school systems as well. And I mean, for me, it really resonates because she has a great book that's called, and I want to make sure I get the title right, that's called Love Builds Brains. And it's about relational learning and teaching, and how much kids are actually, and we're all actually formed, and our brains change when we develop deep relationships with one another. And again, openly expresses how important love is for young people. So she's a really, really fascinating person who blends deep research with practical classroom experience as well.
Yeah. Well, I already have a lot of questions for her. So hopefully, we can get her on the show, but appreciate you sort of nominating her.
Yeah, I know. She's great.
All right.